Here's what I believe at my core. I believe women are well-meaning. We have good intentions, we have good hearts, but my next guest says we don't always convey that to others. In fact, sometimes we miss the mark. We're calling these nice mom misses. It's when you're a nice mom and you're trying to be a nice mom, but your words accidentally tell a different story. Everybody welcome Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson to the studio. She's here to explain. They love you. You have so many fans behind you. Do you feel the love?
Yes.
Yeah, you should. You should. So we're not talking about blatant meanness. We are just talking about accidental slips here and there.
Yeah, when we are not sure how to respond, or even more, when we respond and we think we've said something that's going to be beneficial and help, and it doesn't. It just doesn't help. Now, what we're looking for here is we want to connect, right? So we're talking about with our kids, with our spouse, with our neighbors. We want to offer up advice or a response that connects us, not disconnects us. So that's where we miss the mark, right? So for example, anytime we respond with at least, we've missed the mark, right? A child comes home and says, today was really hard, and we say, well, at least you got to go to school today, right? Or a spouse comes home and says, work was really challenging, and we say, well, at least you had a job, right? We've missed the mark.
Okay, at least. We're saying goodbye to that.
We're getting rid of that.
Okay.
Anytime we offer a response that's minimizing or that blames or avoids, so someone comes to us and says, this was challenging, and we respond with something like, well, it doesn't matter that much. You won't even remember it in 5 years.
We're just dismissing it.
We're dismissing it.
Okay.
We dismiss things oftentimes because we genuinely don't know what to say, or we don't want to make the time to have the conversation.
But say something better and show up. This next one was a total break tap. You say it's a miss to offer advice and solutions.
Yes.
Isn't that one of my fundamental jobs as a mother? What? No?
Not until you've offered empathy first, right? So they're going to come to us and they're going to say something, or our spouse is going to say something, and we're going to respond with the advice. We're going to say, hey, well, have you thought about doing this? Or we come and say, I'm exhausted, right? And we hear from a spouse, they respond with something like, well, you know, I've been telling you if you'd go to bed earlier, you wouldn't be so tired. And the second we hear it, we disconnect, right? So this is another miss. Anytime we compete, we're going to miss the mark. So someone tells us something and we respond with, well, this one time I went through this and it was really challenging.
Which that's sometimes a tricky one, I think, girlfriend to girlfriend, because we're trying to connect. I'll use your word. We're trying to relate, but anytime you're one-upping or comparing.
Right. Sharing doesn't always equal connection. It doesn't always, especially if we haven't attended to them first. So if we don't attend and then we share, or if we attend, and then share, we're in a much better place. But when we hit them first with that competition of, I've been there too, and let me tell you, here's why. Because they're coming to us hoping that we can attend to them. As soon as we offer that, our own perspective, immediately we're asking them to attend to us. We've just reversed why they even showed up. So now instead of it helping them, they're like, okay, well, fine, I'll help you now, right? That's kind of how that feels. So we're gonna attend first.
And finally, you say when we offer sympathy over empathy. Can you help us remember the difference?
Yeah, so sympathy is gonna disconnect. Empathy is gonna connect us. Sympathy, think about it like you have a friend or a family member who's down in a dark hole. Sympathy is being up on the surface and looking down in that hole and saying, man, I'm sorry you're down there. I'm sorry it's so dark. I'm sorry you're all alone down there. That is sympathy. Empathy is actually climbing down in the hole and sitting next to them in the dark and looking at them and saying, I felt scared and lonely also. That's the difference. We're really quick to offer sympathy. We're really quick to say, I'm sorry it's hard. I'm sorry you've been there. That's a bummer that it didn't go the way you wanted. We actually want to climb down in and sit right next to them.
I love that analogy. Doesn't that paint a picture, right? We're down in the hole. We're right next to you. Okay, those are ways we can miss the mark. Let's make the mark. Let's hit the mark. You say first, empathy has to be our driver.
It does, and we've got to understand what it actually means, right? We think that empathy comes through words and conversations. Words and conversations are not what connects us. It's the empathy, but here's where we don't understand sometimes. We're not looking to find ourselves in similar situations as someone else. We're looking to feel similar emotions as someone else. That's what we're offering empathy to. I can't be in your shoes. I'm not you. And so even if we've gone through something similar, I'm still going to be in a position where I've interpreted my situation uniquely, just like you have. What we're looking to do is offer empathy towards the feelings you're experiencing. You felt lonely. I felt lonely too.
It's the loneliness.
We're going to connect over the loneliness.
Yes.
You've been ecstatic. Well, I know what ecstatic feels like. And so I can offer empathy. The empathy connects us through the emotion.
And you want us to make that empathy tangible. How do we do that?
So let's look at the anatomy of what this looks like. I want you to be able to do it, right? We want to be empathetic towards people. In order to do this, so we know how to respond, we first have to recognize other people's emotions. It can be really easy to pick up kids from school and be so invested in what comes next in our own minds that we don't recognize that they got in and they're a little bit sad, or they've had a really challenging day at school, or a spouse comes home and we are so busy working and managing everything and dinner and what's next that we don't realize that they had a long day and they're giving us those emotions, but we don't see them. We also can't recognize other people's emotions when we find ourselves making everything personal. So when someone says something to us and I decide to make it about me, now there's no energy to give towards recognizing how they're feeling. So we've got to recognize their emotion. Another thing we need to do is we need to take on their perspective. So taking on someone else's perspective is this ability to take their information or their data, what's occurred, right, the facts, and then ask how might they be feeling and how might they respond or act as a result of this information. That's taking on another person's perspective. So we want to be really good at looking at a situation and saying, okay, here's what's happened to you today. What feelings might you be experiencing? And even more, how might you act given that that's how you felt all day? That's that perspective taking. From there, a couple other things we can do. We have to make sure we don't judge if we're going to be empathetic. If you want to know how to respond to someone, don't judge them first. When you have a child who says this was hard, we're not going to judge if it was hard or not. When you have a spouse say that they're dealing with a challenge, our job is not to figure out if it's actually a challenge.
We're just going to be in the hole.
We're just simply going to accept that this is what's it for them. The other thing with that is we want to make sure that we see it as their truth. If they say, again, this is hard, that's true to them. Now, it doesn't always mean it's the truth, right? Think about all the times your kids come to you and they say something to you and we hear it and we go, well, it's not that hard. It's not that true, right? We're not looking to figure out if it's true. We're recognizing that to them, it is true. We're going to attend to what's true to them, true to them.
You've taught us deeply, my friend. Heather Johnson, everybody. Thank you so much. Empathy is our currency to connection. I'm going to remember that.